Hello viewers, welcome back to Daily Retro. This is episode 13 of Guide to Games Rooms. I can't believe we've got to number 13 already. It's only been going about a year now. But yeah, really excited to have two guests on today. So two people I've followed on Instagram for a long time and YouTube as well. So that is Lydia of Lydgendary and Ant of the Beats and Bleeps podcast. You might have to correct me on that. But yeah, say hello guys.
No, that's right. Yeah.
Cool, so
thanks for having us on.
no worries. So Lydia, how long have you been on YouTube now?
I think I've been on and off it for about 2.5 years now. When I first started the YouTube, I was very sort of excited to have it, and then I sort of dropped off for a while, but now it's come back in full force for about the last 1.5 years where I've been uploading actually regularly. So yeah, it's going well.
Awesome. Yeah, it's nice especially once you've got a games room. Obviously, it's a recent addition to actually have that space to do like a formal video, as you can call it that.
Yeah, definitely helps.
Cool. So I already know the answer to this, but for the viewers' sort of help, can you answer our first question, which is, when did your games room first appear?
So this particular games room is about 6 months. So we moved in together and now we have this room together. Before I sort of lived in a smallish flat, so my games collection was all over the place. But since we've combined, we've been able to have this big room and have everything in one place, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's been, obviously you've been living here for 6 months-ish, but it's been a progression to get it like this as well. There's still a few bits we probably want to do, but yeah, mainly just buying copious amounts of shelves from IKEA and stuff for all of our games and collectibles and stuff. But we think we've just about got all the furniture we need for now.
For now.
Unless we end up buying more games, which is also probably going to happen.
Yeah, we've already filled one up, so if we get any more, we need another shelf.
Yeah.
More Billy bookcases on the horizon.
I suspect so.
Cool, so that leads us on to our second question, is how long did the current room take to build, or was it a slow evolution?
It's kind of been from the time we've moved in. I think we've only just begun to be happy with it.
Yeah.
How it looks. We were sort of here for about 3 months before we were able to get the Kallax shelves that we've got behind us, and that was a big game changer because obviously all the consoles could be out and connected properly. And yeah, it's taken a good couple of months to gradually build everything up as it is.
And I mean, it was little things like until just before Christmas, I think we didn't have a sofa in here, so we were either sitting on the floor or on a beanbag. But because it's up 2 flights of stairs, we were kind of limited, and it's kind of quite a narrow space. We were limited on what sort of sofa to get, but we found sort of a low sofa beddy one on Argos we got delivered, so that's perfect, and it's because it's really nice and convenient. We can just move it wherever. It's nice and light. So yeah, but that was a good, because before that, one of us would have to sit on the floor or perch up on cushions and stuff if we were both playing games.
Yeah, it wasn't ideal, but it's nice and comfy up here now.
Yeah.
Well, at least you can call it a spare room as well if you have any guests stay, and who wouldn't want to stay in a games room?
Exactly. Lucky them.
Cool, so it's kind of question number 3 is kind of a question that both of you might have to answer separately. So I know you've both had games rooms prior to this one, but where did the inspiration for your rooms come from? Is it from watching YouTubers or from friends in real life, or was it just off your own back? Or
Yeah. Oh, pressure. I mean, I've always, I think part of it for me is I grew up in, I say big family, but like a family with 4 kids, so I never really had my own space. So I feel like having a space dedicated to one of my passions. Obviously the other ones, I'm not going to have a beer room just yet, but we'll see. But yeah, I mean, I just like the idea, and I kind of, even down to little details, so how we've got the consoles, they're by, like, so we've got Nintendo and they're in chronological order, and then Sega, and it's just nice to have them all set up, because before that it was a case of, if I wanted to play on the Mega Drive, I'd have to go into the loft, get the Mega Drive out, set it up, and then by that time I've done that, it's been half an hour and I've not played, and it's just nice to kind of have all of our sort of retro things together and just all our collectibles and stuff. I mean, you've obviously got a lot more figures and stuff than I have, but on that side, it's like, I mean, I didn't have to buy any because Lydia's got all of them.
The good thing about combining collections, you don't have to buy as much.
Exactly.
I think for me, it's probably, very much the same, just wanting to have like my own space for games. But definitely being on Instagram and seeing other people's collections and how they've grown and how they set things up, you definitely take, whether you realise it or not, you definitely take a lot of inspiration and ideas from that. Just seeing how other people do it and how they set up their lights and how they have everything displayed. I definitely saw a lot of people have the Kallax units, so that was something that we always wanted to have. Just taking inspiration from everyone's setup collectively. Being part of the community is alwaes lovely because people suggest things to you and they give you game suggestions or sort of display suggestions, and just being part of the community has been a big inspiration.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. That's cool. I'm kind of the same, to be honest. Before I started YouTube, it's definitely come mostly from Instagram. Instagram's quite a sort of an aesthetically sort of derived place, isn't it? So you can take a lot of ideas from other people's setups through photos.
Yeah, you have to get through all the sort of RGB computer setups for a while, but once you start finding the retro side of it, it's a lot more inspiring.
Yeah, you just have to try and not get too downhearted when you find like American games rooms that are like the size of your house. But
oh god, yeah. I've had so many people kind of, that room looks tiny, and it's like, I live in England.
Yeah. Like, it's a converted loft room, and it's like, as much as we would love to have a massive games room, we also have to pay for where we live. So it's like, you can't really justify potentially paying an extra few £100 a month in rent just for a nice big games room. So we just kind of made do with what we had.
Yeah, and then have no money to pay for games. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, budget's got to be there for games.
Exactly.
Cool. So question number 4 is probably maybe a separate question again. So what is the favourite item or feature in your games room?
Ooh, that's a hard one.
I
mean,
you can focus on one or the other if you want to.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me it's probably having everything set up behind. Just being able to have all the consoles out in front of me is quite a novelty. The way I used to have my setup before was I kind of had it all over the place. So I lived in quite a small flat, so I just had to put things where they would fit. So everything was a bit all over the place, but being able to have everything just in one place, all cleanly set up. And a lot of people sort of comment on the fact that it's just very tidy. And I think for me, that's what I really like. I don't want it to be minimal, but I don't want to see, boxes everywhere. I like it to be quite minimal so I can just focus on the games and sort of on what I'm playing and not feel like there's too much going around. Probably that's the highlight of the game room. And having CRT TVs as well. It's definitely like the biggest move forward in retro gaming that I did was getting a CRT TV. And I love my little TV. I think it's great. So yeah, that's definitely like the highlight for me.
Cool. And Ant?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably the main part is obviously the main focus, the cabinet, cupboard, shelf, whatever you want to call it behind us that has all the consoles set up. It's just nice to be able to come up, turn the consoles on, press a button on a SCART adapter, and then you're playing that console. You don't have to set any of the leads up or unplug anything. You just can literally plug it in and go, turn it on, and then you're playing it. And I mean, as much as people say like about retro gaming, one of the things is like, oh yeah, you can just turn it on and you don't have to wait for any updates or anything. But then when you're having to plug it in and get the console out of somewhere, having that set up, just being able to do that kind of is that sort of joy you had when you were growing up. Well, for me anyway. But yeah, I mean, in terms of like a specific item, I think there was a new edition that Lydia got just before Christmas, which is the Mighty Bowser Lego
was gonna
set that
mention that.
it's like I keep looking at it, just like it's just awesome. It's such a cool thing, and yeah,
He's a bit of a brute. He's massive.
yeah. It's just the scale of it. It's the fact that like we are saying growing up, is like Lego was kind of like bigger sets that were very intricate and like with small cars and stuff. So, but nothing was that size, or I never had anything that size growing up. So to have something like that is just really cool.
Yeah. I think the Lego Bowser's definitely been a big highlight for me.
Yeah.
He sits very proudly on the shelf now, and just I can see him out the corner of my
Yeah.
eye. And he's awesome.
He's actually coming out of the shelf because he's that big.
Awesome. Yeah, you can't knock Bowser. I've got a little Bowser plushie hanging from like my rear view mirror in my car. Occasionally get like kids like point at it when I'm at the lights.
That's cute.
Cool, so kind of it might actually lead us on to question 5. So those who watch this series already know this, but what is the most expensive item in the games room? So I know that the Bowser is expensive, but maybe talk about a game that's most expensive, or a piece of hardware, or
That's probably the game one's more for you because you've got quite a few rare ones.
Yeah, I mean, if it was an individual game, it would probably be Panzer Dragoon Saga for the Sega Saturn. I mean, I think I bought it about 4 years ago, and I personally paid, I think it was 180, which is a ridiculous amount of money. It's a really good game, but I personally feel my logic in buying it is that I can buy it, play it, and then recoup that money by selling it. But you see copies now go upwards of like £500 on eBay. But yeah, I mean, it's generally, I find most of the more expensive games for myself are around that era. So like Suikoden, or however you pronounce it, 1 and 2 on the PlayStation are also quite pricey. I think they're sort of the 3 main ones that I've got in my collection that are on the pricey one, other than like the original Pokemon games. I kind of don't view them as expensive because I didn't pay that much for them. But now they're all, especially like my ones are a box, like the original Game Boy Red, Blue, Yellow, and Gold, Silver, Crystal, and those sorts of ones. They're all boxed and worth a reasonable amount now. But yeah, I kind of, because I never paid that much for them, I kind of don't see them as valuable to me. And then if I was to go and sell them, I'd have a reasonable amount of money. But yeah, I mean, also value is subjective, but that's a very long-winded conversation.
Yeah,
no, that's kind of a similar thing to what other people say. They say, "Oh, I bought something years ago, and now it's worth a lot of money." It seems to be a common theme.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few games that I want to get that I know are on the priciest side, but there's kind of a limit as to how much I would actually buy a retro game for, just because I feel like, a lot of retro games are quite short games, so they haven't got sort of a lot of longevity in playing them, and it's sort of, you can't really justify spending hundreds of pounds on a single game. I'd rather buy a couple of consoles and 10 games for that price. I don't think I've got any really valuable games at the moment. Probably Bowser's the most expensive figure I've got. I've got a few exclusive pops. Some of the Harry Potter pops that I've got are like the exclusive ones, like he's on the broom catching the little snitch ball. Like my game's probably not as near as worth anything as Panzer Dragoon.
No.
I tend to go for the more, just what I see that I fancy playing. And I think a lot of mine are the more lame games, so like Sonic, and so I haven't really got anything too valuable. I think the most expensive game I bought was probably Vagrant Story. I think that's it, really. Yeah, nothing too
cool. That's fair enough. It's a good answer. Most people just say what they answered in the previous question, so that's really good. Thank you. Okay, so question number 6 is, what do you play most in your games room? Is there a specific console that is your favourite, or?
It's Dreamcast for me. Love my Dreamcast. I think I just love the controller and having the little screen on it. It's very cute, and I just find a lot of the Sega games have a certain charm to it that I didn't really grow up gaming, so I don't have the same love for Nintendo that a lot of people do, because a lot of people just absolutely adore Nintendo, and I don't really have that feeling for Nintendo. For me, I've always been more collecting Sega games, and yeah, they just have a certain charm to me, and the Dreamcast has always been my favourite. I think visually it just looks so much better than a lot of the other consoles of that era. I love my PlayStation 2 as well. I've been playing that quite a lot, but I still always go more towards the Dreamcast. And yeah, I really love collecting for the Dreamcast, so that's probably my one. And then, yeah, second to that would be the PlayStation. I'm currently playing Bully on that as well, which has been a really awesome game to play. Never played it before, and that's been a lot of fun. So yeah, those two are probably my favourites.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I was going to say, and I don't know if this is going to be another question as to gripes necessarily with the game room, but like, because obviously how we've got it set up, we can only, unless we're playing 2-player games, only one of us can play a console at a certain time, and we generally play different consoles at the same time. I would like to play the Dreamcast a lot more, but you're normally playing it. Yeah, but I since we've had it, I'd say it's probably been the N64 and GameCube I've played the most on. I mean, been playing Ocarina of Time and Banjo-Kazooie on the N64. They're both games I'd never played, never had an N64 up until a few years ago. And until we had this space, I've never really had too much chance to play it. So got lots of sort of catching up on that to do. Then with the GameCube, it's been playing Super Mario Sunshine, Lost Kingdoms, which is like a card deck building RPG, which is exclusive to the GameCube, which is quite cool. It's a bit of a different game. I mean, I think it's fairly short, so I'll probably end up finishing it fairly soon. But yeah, and also just as normal with me playing Mario Golf on both of those consoles quite a lot, and just generally golf games and
any golf game.
Yeah, I find sort of like for that, if I'm not sure what I want to play and don't want to go into a story-heavy game or anything that's like that, and I just want to play something that exists in its own thing, like golf games or racing games, I find particularly good for that, because it's like, you don't have to do any progression. You're just playing one round or one race or one championship, and then that's that.
That's something I quite like about the older retro consoles, like the Mega Drivers. They are very much, because they have a story, but they're very much level orientated. So it's just like, you can just plug it in and just have a play for 5 minutes if you just don't want to play a story or anything. You don't have to worry about save points, because there is no save points, so you just can enjoy playing the game for what it is.
Yeah,
and that's something I quite like about retro. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I'm very much the same, to be honest. I recently recuperated my love for the Game Boy Advance, because I got the analog pocket console.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I've got Mario Advance Tour Golf on that, and
Great
on
game.
that screen it looks insanely good. Yeah, it's one of those games I have on my bedside table, and yeah, just quickly dip into it, and it's really, really fun.
Nice. You need those kind of games for us. I love modern games too, but you definitely need something that you can just play and just let your brain drift off wherever it needs to.
Most definitely. Cool. So, question number 7: are there any challenges or problems you've sort of had when you built the room, or still unsolved problems?
Unsolved problems, probably cable management.
Yeah, I mean, there's I'd say there's cable management's a big one. We did it a bit, but then just because of some videos you might be recording soon, we decided it might not be a good idea to fully do it, because we're going to end up moving stuff around a lot just for some of the video ideas you've had. I would say, I mean, one of the sort of just the nature of this room is the way the roof slopes, because it's a loft room. Actually, it's not that plain if you look at it as a whole room, but because it's hard to kind of hang pictures and stuff up in that area, it kind of looks a bit wow. I can never remember what the code. Yeah, it's that, and because it's a rented house, obviously we can't decorate, so it's up to kind of that sort of thing to do it. We've got some lights we've got on the consoles that we need to finish putting up, and it's it's just sort of like it's set up and we can use it, but it's those last few finishing touches that probably because it's set up and we can use it that we're just playing and kind of ignoring them.
Yeah, I think that's probably been the biggest challenge, is actually making it feel a bit more cozy in here.
Yeah.
Because it is just a white room essentially. It's quite difficult to decorate it. Like Ant said, we have put more photos up on the wall and everything, but yeah, it's very hard to decorate that part behind us because it is a sloped wall. So that's definitely been a bit challenging. But I do think when it's darker and you have all the lights on, you don't notice because you've got all the colours going on. So it's not so bad. It's just during the daytime it can look a bit plain. But I think we're getting there slowly.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're sort of adding little improvements rather than major ones now. So it's just making it more cozy, I think. And the sofas helped with that, so we're not sitting on the floor.
I mean, the other thing is, as well, just because it's kind of quite a long and narrow room, when you see the pictures of the end we're at, it like looks like quite plain, because we've just got the games and the consoles, but then the other end we've got all like the collectibles, so there's, you know, like a good collection of pops and figures and stuff, and it's much more decorated. It's just, you know, the nature of photos, you can only kind of capture one of those things in one go.
Yeah, it's tricky to show it all.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, it can be quite difficult, especially when you're in rented places. I have interviewed people before, even some really big YouTubers who are still in like rented houses, and yeah, it's difficult because obviously you've got to think about not damaging the walls, and that was one of the biggest positives when I bought my first house with my wife about almost 2 years ago now, was being able to actually put up like a floating shelf. Is like such a simple thing, but yeah, it looks so good for displaying things, and yeah, you kind of have to limit yourself with stuff that's not hung from the wall until that point. But yeah, on the cable management side, it's difficult until you've got like everything as you want it, isn't it? It's you've got to have everything in a static position before you can even think about doing that.
Yeah, and also all the cables end up being far too long, and it's really hard to know what to do with them.
You either have the combination of them being too long, and like you kind of got like an extra 2 meters of cable you have to hide somewhere, or my NES one that's basically it's the closest console to the TV and it's still too short. It's like the one I have for my NES is about this long, so you can literally there's no way you can put it round like tidily because it's too short. So I mean, I have got another cable for it after we did that, so little changes like that is just sort of to make it look a bit tidier.
We get there eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely worth you're probably already aware, but I buy loads of cables for old consoles from retrogamingcables.co.uk, and they are fairly expensive, but the quality difference is massive, and generally they're like 1.8 meter cables, so that's generally enough for like pretty much anything. And yeah, on the pooling side, I can't recommend Velcro wrap enough. You just buy it on eBay, and any like cables that are way too long or pooling or whatever, I just like wrap it up carefully and put a Velcro wrap around it, and it's weird because you don't think it's going to look very good, but actually it does look quite nice. But yeah, it's definitely something to do once you've decided the final position for everything.
Yeah,
definitely need to invest in that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing you could think of is just shoving some backs to it and just hiding all the cables behind that, but it depends how easy that is to do.
Yeah,
I think I saw one of the people I interviewed recently did that. They just bought some like backing for their Calax, and it does actually look really, really good. So yeah, I think that's Sean. Did somebody say retro on Instagram? He's like quite a big Instagrammer, but yeah, he does the same thing, and it definitely looks good when you do that. Yeah, it's definitely an easier way to go if you don't want to spend hours doing cable management.
That's my brain.
Yeah.
Cool. So, penultimate question: have you got any upcoming changes for your games room?
Not really, I don't think.
No, I mean, I think we're fairly happy with it. I think once, I say, the cable management and maybe a few more like pictures and stuff on the walls. Other than that, I think the main focus is probably going to be buying more games, really.
Yeah.
Filling
Yeah.
out those bookcases.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we've got any plans to buy any more consoles necessarily. I think we've pretty much got everything apart from like really rare ones.
Yeah.
So it might be something we look into eventually. But as far as like the games room goes, it's just basically tidying it and getting everything organised better. But no real big changes unless we move again.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's, you know, when you're in rented accommodation, that's always going to be a factor that you're going to have to move at some point. But for now, I think we've got it pretty much how we want it
Yeah.
and how we can have it. There's not many changes we could do to the room.
No.
We couldn't really move things the other way around just because of how the room is. It's sort of like in an L shape, and we use the little cove as like storage, so you can't really do much. Well,
My
you
crap
do.
corner, basically.
All those extra bits.
Yeah.
So yeah, nothing really to change as of yet. But obviously
So,
everything changes.
Kind of a side question to that then. I'm a very big fan of RetroTink upscalers. Have upscalers ever sort of crossed your mind, like doing SCART to HDMI, or are you just too in love with CRTs?
I've used ones before, and I do see the benefit myself. But one thing as well is that we would struggle to get a bigger TV in here, just because of basically those CRTs are almost touching the ceiling anyway. So with the nature, it would be like a fairly small TV when we have it. And even with the upscalers, I found just with like the aspect ratio and stuff, because obviously most of the consoles are supposed to be played in 3:4 rather than 16:9 or whatever it is. Apologies anyone if I've got ratios wrong, but like even that side of it, and it's just even when they display it 3:4 on a widescreen TV, that still annoys me.
Yeah. I can totally understand that. That's one of the things that bugs me when I play my PlayStation 2 on my LCD. It's 4:3 ratio, and it does look a bit odd. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I used to play not with HDMI or anything, but I never used to have the CRT until about 2 years ago. So I did used to play it on a flat screen TV, and it was fine. It was fine for what I had at the time, but as soon as I got the CRT, I was like, wow, these games don't look so old anymore. Because they look so flat and washed out, and it just didn't look as good. They looked almost a bit blurry. And then as soon as I got the CRT, I was like, wow, they actually, like, some of these games can pass as like modern games almost.
It's what they were built for, wasn't it? So it's
Exactly. And I kind of just prefer playing them. I get a lot of people say, oh, why don't you just buy an emulator? But the whole thing about retro for me is I enjoy playing them as they are intended to be played. So I like having the original console. I like, putting the disc into the console and having the original controllers and having it set up exactly how it should have been set up. Especially for me, because I didn't really grow up playing games that much. So it's a bit of a nostalgia trip for me, being able to go back and play them how they're intended to be played. And that's a big thing for me. So yeah, for now, probably not going to change anything too much.
I mean, I think as well, just with like the subject of the TVs and using the original hardware, I've used emulation before and it's been fine, but then you get games that don't necessarily work, or you get ROM hacks and certain things. So I've got like a copy of Earthbound Zero, which is like a translation of the original Mother game for the NES, and I tried to get that working on an emulator and it wouldn't, but I've got a physical cartridge of it that works fine. And also just little things like light gun games that don't work on HD TV unless you're going to buy one of those fancy £100 light guns for that work on them. And so I mean, that was one of the things I had growing up. It's like Time Crisis, the Die Hard trilogy. Only one of them's light gun. What's the other one? Oh,
House of the Dead?
No, that's one of them. But the one on the PlayStation that was in all the arcades, Point Blank games. But just that sort of thing. And like, I mean, that's in terms of as well, just digressing and making a mess of the structure of the interview. Going back to things to add, it's like, it's from my perspective, it's stuff like just little hardware, not necessarily new consoles, but like I'd like to get, and there's Zapper and, you know, certain like just little extra bits of hardware that we don't have now.
Yeah, it's nice to see. There's not a lot of people who do like just play original consoles on original CRTs. So yeah, it's nice to see. Yeah, I'm very much sort of in between. Of like, I thought it'd be nice to have a nice like PVM, as well as sort of an upscaler for my LCD TV, but it's the expense as well. I mean, my wife is just absolute despair when she found out I paid $300 for my upscaler. So, but I was like, I could play PlayStation 2 in 4K, and she was like, so. So yeah, there's two different sides to it.
Yeah, it's definitely an investment, and I appreciate not everyone has the space to have all the original consoles. So at the end of the day, it's like you play how you can play and how you want to play, and no one should be telling you how you should be playing retro games. It's what you can afford and you know, have space for at the end of the day.
Yeah, most definitely. Cool. So leading on to our final question, are there any tips you would give to anyone who was thinking of building their first ever games room?
I think just take it slow. Don't rush to get things, you know, measure properly. That's a big thing. Like, actually think about where things are going to go and sort of be a bit more realistic about it. It's very easy to think, oh, just, you know, be amazing to have a games room. I can have everything in there, but we found that's not necessarily the case. Things take up a lot more space than you think they do. I mean, we bought a big shelf that we thought we'd fit everything in, and turns out we could only fit half of our games on it. So we had to buy more games room shelves as well. And I think just taking it slow, building it up gradually. We kind of added on new furniture slowly, so we didn't buy everything at once. So every bit of furniture we were getting, we were filling it up first and then thinking, okay, what else can we fit in the games room? How will it look? Will it be too much? Or I think just taking it slow. Building it up gradually. Don't feel like you have to fill everything with filler games. And you know, when I first got into retro gaming, I very much just bought everything I was seeing, but now I'm very much sort of going for quality over quantity. So it's like, oh, you know, I could buy that game, but actually I'm probably not going to play it, so I won't buy it. And yeah, just going for quality.
Yeah,
cool.
I mean, I think when we started this, we had all the consoles. Like, we've not bought any consoles since we've had the CRTs, so we could kind of say like, this is what we need, and the only thing we're going to get extra of is games and collectibles, really. So we knew what we had and what we needed to get space for. Obviously, if you're starting and you've either just got a few consoles and you're looking to add to it, it's just sort of, in terms of a general collection of prices, it's impossible to have everything you would want, just because, well, I'm sure some people have got the money to do it, but realistically, you know, you kind of need to pinpoint exactly what you want. And if that means, you know, playing some games on emulators to see if you're going to really like them to make it worth buying, because it's not worth spending, as I did with Thunder Dragon Saga, a lot of money on and then potentially not enjoy it. Like, obviously I know you can sell it, but it's still quite a big investment at that point. And yeah, I mean, I still view a lot of the things as an investment. You know, worst case scenario, if something happens in our life that we could sell them, but I'd rather not.
I think the other thing as well is don't compare to other people's setup.
Yeah.
I think for me, especially when I didn't have a games room and I very much had very limited space, I lived in a shared house for 2 years, and then so obviously only had a very small room that I could put my things in. And then I lived in a very small flat, and it was very easy to look at other people's games rooms and collections and go, oh, I feel really bad about mine because it doesn't look as good as theirs. And it's quite easy to compare and sort of be negative about your collection, but at the end of the day, not everyone has the space, and sort of life has to take priority. So don't compare, and just enjoy collecting and make the best of what you've got, really. And you never know what might come in the future. You might have the opportunity to have a huge games room in future. So yeah, don't compare too much to how other people have their collections.
And
That's a
definitely,
really good answer. Thank you.
and definitely
Yeah.
having 2 people with a collection means that you can get twice as much stuff.
You can find a gamer for
Yeah.
partner that makes it even better.
My end goal is getting my 1-year-old into gaming so that I can sort of move some stuff into his room as well. But yeah, we'll see how that goes.
It's for kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, this room is like the forbidden lair for him. I have to have a sliding lock at the top of the door so he doesn't just run in and start pulling stuff off the shelf.
That would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
We luckily don't have to worry about that, but
No.
yeah, maybe if they've got kids, they might have to be supervised.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's alright, we can keep an eye on him because yeah, we only ever plan to have one, and yeah, it's kind of just about manageable with one, so cool. So final bit of the episode will just be me talking a bit about the favourite bit of your rooms from the pictures you sent through. It's kind of been mentioned in the episode prior to this, but I think for me it was just like the minimalist sort of look of it. So obviously some of that's not intentional, but as Lydia said, it has actually quite a nice aesthetic to be sort of quite minimalistic. And very close second to that is the fact that, like you say, you're very passionate about having the original consoles plugged into what should be the TV they were designed for. So that's really refreshing to see. There's not many people I've interviewed like that. But the people that are, they're really passionate about it, and yeah, it's really nice to see. I think the aesthetics look really, really nice, and you look at some other people's games rooms and there's too much going on. So yeah, it's nice to have that sort of clean aesthetic, in my opinion, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to see that there's quite a lot of people I've seen who've got like an entire room and it's walled, it's sort of ceiling to floor of just boxes and games, and it's very cool, but I look at it and I'm like, oh my god, I don't know what to look at. It's stressing me.
Yeah. I mean, it's like even when I look at our games, and I've sorted them out now, but like when I was first here, I was getting distracted by like the games not being alphabetized and stuff. So like when it's that, when people have rooms that's that busy, it's like, how do you actually even concentrate on the games you're playing when you've got all this going on?
It's a bit much sometimes.
Yeah. And when you've got a room like that as well, it's nice to walk in there, be able to see a game on the shelf and just pick it out, rather than having to worry about, oh, is my emulator going to work? Have I even got the ROM for that? You just pick it off the shelf and start playing. So that's definitely an appeal for me on most people's games rooms, including mine. But yeah, that's the end of the episode, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you very soon for episode 14. Cheers.
Bye.